right, let me get my screen going on here. All right, okay, well, it's 6 o'clock, so I think we're gonna get started. Good evening, everyone. My name is Jim Ostrowski, and I work in the Michigan Department of Environment, Great Lakes and Energy's Environmental Support Division. I welcome you all to our hearing tonight, public hearing for submission of, and I'm gonna read the submission number. It's HNY-TBHE-B as in Bravo 3X0P. That's Midwest, and this is for the Dollar General site, as many people know it. We've got a few people we're going to introduce in a minute. I want to let you all know too that with me as a co-host to help me with this is Joel Roseberry. He's with our division as well, so he'll be helping me out with questions and such, as you'll see as we go on. A couple things in terms of the agenda for tonight. We're going to start with introductions. And really for these meetings are broken into two halves. We have an information session, and then after that we have the official hearing. And so that's how we're going to run it today. So the information session, what we're going to do is have a presentation by the applicant to talk about the proposed project. And we'll spend a little time for questions and answers if you have any. This is really informal, or if you have a question, you can ask it either verbally or through the question box, and we'll take some time to answer those questions as best as we can. Depending on how many questions we get, we could end early and go right to the hearing. If we're getting a lot of questions, we might have to end by, we'll have to end by 6:30, that part of it, to move to the hearing. So at 6:30, if we're not done with the questions and answers, we will have to move to the official hearing. So once we do the questions and answers and do the presentation, we move to the more formal part of the evening, and that's the official comment part. And during the official comment part, that's where you actually make your official comments for the record. That's where we don't really talk to you. We just call you up virtually and you make your comment. We'll also talk about where to find information and who to go to for the questions. All right, so now I'm going to introduce the other staff we have here with us. So if you guys want to turn on your cameras and mics, go ahead and introduce yourselves. So I'll start with Derek.
Hey there, my name is Derek Haraldson. I am a Senior Environmental Quality Analyst in the Kalamazoo District Office, covering Van Buren and Kalamazoo County, and I will be the hearings officer for this online public hearing tonight.
Hi, I'm John Byha. I'm District Engineer in the Kalamazoo District Office. I handle floodplain regulations for the 8 counties in our district. And I'll be just assisting Derek tonight.
I'm Kyle Alexander, and I'm the district supervisor for the Water Resources Division in the Kalamazoo District.
All right, so you'll be hearing from those guys a little later on. And okay, so here's how we're going to run it for questions and for comments too, I guess. So if you have a question tonight, we'll be taking those after our presentation. And I know it looks like our presenters are in attendance, Peter and Elise. Peter and Elise, I will unmute you in just a moment to do your presentation. I have your presentation with me, so don't worry about that. But when it's time for questions, we're going to submit, you can submit your question by the Q&A box, just type it in there and we'll read it off for everybody. Or you can click the raise hand icon. And if you click the raise hand icon, we'll call on you and we will unmute your microphone so you can ask your question. It doesn't look like there's anybody joining us by phone only, but if per chance somebody is listening on the phone, if you want to raise your hand, you type *9 and we will call on you by your phone number and unmute you. Okay, so again, how the meeting worked during the Q&A part, you can type your question in. When we get to the comment section, official comments, you can either raise your hand to make your official comment and we'll call on you and unmute you, or if you'd like, you can type your question into the question box and that will serve as an official comment. You'll type the word comment and type your comment in, and that'll be an official comment. Also, in My Waters, you know, tonight's not the only time you can make a comment. If you look under the public hearing event submission, you'll find a link to submit your comments in My Waters as well electronically. Oh, and you can also email Derek if you like. So Derek, that's his email address, haraldsond michigan.gov. You can email him. Okay, that's doesn't apply to this one. Let's go to this one. All right, so at this point, I'm going to turn it over to our presenters, applicants, Peter and Elise. Peter and Elise, are you there? I'll have Joel unmute you.
I'm here. This is Elise.
Great.
Pete is here.
All right, great. Glad to have you here. So what you should see on my screen is the documents that you all provided to us. And let me know when you want me to flip to the next one. This is the page 1, I think. It's a PDF document, so I'm just going to move over my thing here. Maybe it'll make it a little easier to see. And we can email people these documents PDF too afterwards for those of you that might not be able to see it that well. So Peter and Lisa, I'll let you go ahead and take it away.
Hey,
Yeah.
Jim, I don't believe we can see the slides at this point.
Now, let me see if I can stop it, and I'll share it again. So stand by. I might have picked the wrong one. Thanks for letting me know. All right, can you all see that one?
Yes.
Joel, anybody? Okay, good.
Yep.
All right, good. I got the right one. All right, so go ahead, you guys. Take it away. Let me know when you want me to flip the page.
Fair enough. Thank you. So good evening, everybody. This is Pete Olazuk with Midwest V LLC. I'm the proposed buyer of the property and also the developer. So as you can see, there already is kind of an existing structure that currently sits on the piece of property. The property is a little bit larger than what we overall need, but the wetlands obviously create the impact that we're kind of here tonight in regards to the area that's kind of highlighted in green. Obviously, I think you can kind of see the yellow property boundary and then the green kind of boundary for what was identified as a wetlands area. What we are proposing, obviously, is the impact into that space. There is the existing structure with the existing parking lot that is there that I believe is kind of, over the past couple of months, fallen in a little bit more disrepair. But to kind of summarize the kind of the overall project, if you want to go to the next slide, I think that will kind of be telling to what we're proposing, please. Perfect. So as you can kind of see, we've got that that black dashed line that kind of runs at kind of that funny little angle. I'm assuming everybody can kind of tell the difference for what it is. That kind of depicts the delineated wetland boundary. As you can see, our area of impact is very minimal, and this was in part with working with the community where they did actually grant us variances to push the development to almost mimic quite similarly to what is existing there now, otherwise just falling in compliance with, you know, parking space, drive aisles, things like that, along with ADA accessibility and maintaining our building footprint. So I guess really what we've been able to determine was certainly working with the community is that they granted us all the variances we needed, and we did receive staff approval with what we were proposing and what we are proposing for the overall development. And I do believe that Derek and the team have received kind of the support letter from the community itself, kind of identifying how they are working with us and how they support this project completely. Really, we're here to answer any potential questions that might be had in regards to specifics. The back side of the building, as you can kind of see, we're proposing just a stone riprap to kind of handle the grade shift as it goes back down into the area from the building footprint. But outside of that, the overall development holds very little impact to the overall area of wetland space. And I apologize in regards if I'm kind of stepping out of the typical formality of how these meetings go, but you know, again, me as a developer, and then we've got Elise, and then I also know that Jason, my engineer, is on the call as well. Are really here to answer any questions the public might have. It's a very kind of straightforward with what we're looking at. We don't believe, and it's been proven from Fishback and their team, that this is a minimal impact on the overall area for what it is that we're proposing.
And I can jump in right now and just give a very quick overview of the impacts because there might be issues that folks are concerned about. So
Sorry, could you just introduce yourself really quick?
Oh, yeah. So this is Elise Tripp. I am a wetland consultant for Fishbeck, and I've been involved with this project from the beginning. So I'm the person who delineated the wetland boundary and have been working with Midwest with the permitting. And also on the Fishbeck team is Brian McKisson, who is also on this call. He is a floodplain engineer. And so he handled the floodplain concerns associated with the project. So the Kalamazoo River is to the east of the site. And there are two minor impacts that are regulated impacts. There's a less than 1/10 of an acre wetland fill impact, primarily within the footprint of the building because the wetland kind of jogs towards Michigan Avenue a bit. And the building was set as close to the road as was practical to minimize wetland impact as much as possible. We did an extensive alternatives analysis to minimize impacts to the greatest extent. The second regulated activity is a bit of floodplain fill. We minimized that by incorporating a detention basin with a forebay at the eastern end of the site. So the cumulative floodplain fill is just 87 cubic yards. This detention basin is for stormwater management. The site currently doesn't have any stormwater management attributes to it. So this is an add-on that will be beneficial to pre-treat stormwater coming from the site before it goes into the river. And it also provides a compensatory cut to compensate for wetland fill. Floodplain fill, sorry about that. So those are the two regulated areas. And we have a lot of information we submitted to EGLE with regards to our alternatives analysis and the different approaches we took that to us made the most sense and has the least overall impact. So I guess I'll just leave it at that. And then if there are any more specific questions, we can respond to that. And I'll just say to EGLE staff, if a floodplain issue comes up, please unmute Brian McKisson because he's really the best person to answer any questions related to floodplain.
Thank you, Elise.
Great, thanks Elise and Peter. So now what we're going to do is open it up for questions, and I had a couple questions that have come into the question box. Just want to remind you, if you want to type a question in, you can type it into the question box and we'll read those off. If you want to ask a question, just click the raise hand icon and Joel will unmute your mic and you can talk after I call your name. So with that, Derek, are you there? I'll let you put your camera on too so you can help me decide who wants to answer these.
Yep.
All right, so the first question says, it appears from a comparison of the aerial of the existing structure and parking lot with the proposed structure and parking lot that the footprint of impervious surface will increase. Can you tell us what is the ratio comparison of impervious surfaces?
That might be a Jason question, actually. Jason Raleigh?
Okay. Can we see if Jason's on our
Good evening. Can you hear
attendees?
me?
Yeah, he's on. There he is.
Good
Okay.
evening.
Thanks,
This is Jason Raleigh with AR Engineering, working with Midwest and Fishbeck on the project. If you give me a quick moment, I can look up the stormwater comparison that we calculated and provide a response back to that momentarily. So if you want to jump to the next question, that would be great, and I can look up those numbers real quick.
Yeah, we can do that. So we'll come back to that question in just a second, Jason. Next question is, Will the proposed construction diminish the capability of the wetland to mitigate problems from heavy rains? So Derek, is that something that EGLE staff should be answering, or?
Yeah, I think I can tackle that one. So I think there's obviously that would be one of the impacts or the potential adverse impacts that we'd be looking at. So I would say obviously there's the potential if the wetland is being filled. There's some wetland fill. There's some floodplain fill. Obviously, would that diminish some of the capability of the wetland to mitigate problems from heavy rains? I mean, it's going to eliminate some of the area of wetland, to absorb and to mitigate, storm runoff. What would the effect in a heavy rain scenario? How this amount of impact? What effect would it cause? I can't say we've looked at that specifically, but in general, the effect of the project on the wetland and all of the functions and on the floodplain that they're performing, this would be one of those. So this is something that we'll be looking at, in our review.
Yeah, and kind of going along with that, Derek, follow-up question was, are you worried about flooding
Yep.
for this property and or any impacts to the neighbors?
Yeah, I mean, so I'll comment a little bit, and then maybe, if somebody else, I don't know if John Baha, our floodplain engineer, is on, but we have heard concerns, obviously, from folks about the impacts being in the floodplain, of what the impacts that the project would have. I guess I understand the amount of floodplain fill to be relatively small in terms of significance, but I won't wade too much farther into it there. So I don't know if
Yeah, I can follow up on that, Derek.
Okay.
This is the Kalamazoo River, and in this section of the Kalamazoo River, the flows are very high during flooding. Well, normally high too. The amount of fill they're proposing here is very negligible compared to the amount of, the floodplain capacity that's already there. The flooding control structure really that's controlling all the flooding here in this area is the road crossing at East Michigan Avenue, I think it is, M96. That's what controls the floodplain in this area. This little bit of fill in the floodplain at the very edge of the floodplain is not going to make any difference at all. So I don't really have any concerns about that.
Okay. Where does the stormwater collected in the basins go? Does it go into the river? How is it conveyed? Is it filtered?
Just real quick, that part of the design is the stormwater basins are part of the floodplain cut, so it's in upland. We have information in the what was submitted in the application about the stormwater design, so I think some of these questions could be somewhat answered in there. But I know the outlet first after the initial treatment, it discharges over riprap to an upland area outside of the wetland. I believe, I'm not sure if it's outside of the floodplain, but when there is a discharge, and then Jason and Elise jump in here to kind of, buffer this, but it does eventually, when there's a discharge, it's going to filter, from my understanding of the design, over riprap into an upland area, and then into that forested floodplain wetland, which is at least 100 feet from the river itself. So I don't know that there would be a direct discharge to the river ever from it. But.
Yeah, that sounds correct to me. The stormwater, I believe, goes to the forebay, which is at the south of the detention basin. There, the solids would settle out. When the water gets high enough, it would flow over riprap, overflow into the detention basin, which is an upland. And then once that gets high enough with water, which it may or may not, depending on the rain event, there is infiltration going on also. So you have direct groundwater infiltration happening in both the forebay and the detention basin. The detention basin gets high enough, then it flows over the bank into the forested floodplain, which is a bit removed from the river. So there's quite quite a few hoops that the water has to go through before it gets to the river, if it ever does get that far, due to infiltration and absorption into the adjacent wetland.
And I can add a few additional items on there as well. The
This is
design,
Jason, right?
yes, this is Jason Raleigh, sorry.
Thanks.
The design was based off of Kalamazoo County Drain Commissioner's requirements. And so the forebay acts as a pre-treatment device to pre-treat runoff from the parking lot. Runoff from the building is collected into a pipe. Everything is routed into the forebay. And once that forebay, that pre-treatment volume is reached, it does overflow as Elise and everybody has indicated. And then there in the detention basin, there is a quality volume requirement that was met per the drain office's standards. And as discussed, that will slowly get into the ground, infiltrate into the, through the basin, and then eventually, if it needs to overflow to the existing forested wetland on site. And impacts at that stage are above the outlet, the control and everything is all above the wetland limits. And then also I did track down the, with the previous question, if we can, is it fine to go back to that real quick?
Yeah, sure. So if this is Jason still, so I'm going to read it off. It appears from the comparison of the aerial and existing structure and parking lot with the proposed structure and parking lot, that the footprint of impervious surface will increase. Can you tell us what is the ratio comparison of impervious surfaces?
Yes, so the existing impervious surface area was just under 0.5 acres and the proposed is 0.64 acres. So it's just over about a 30% increase. And as previously mentioned, existing conditions, water straight discharges to the wetland and the floodplain area. And with our proposed development, we are having to force store and treat that runoff. And so with the increase, we're not just treating the increase, we're treating the required total impact of the development.
Okay. Going back to the basins, question is, does all of the building and parking lot run into the basin?
And I can answer that. Yes, so the building itself is pitched to the rear of the site, and it will be collected in a downspout system, a header pipe running along the back and out. It will be completely piped to a catch basin near the forebay area, and everything else from the parking lot is also collected into a storm system and piped directly into the forebay before any discharge.
Okay. Question says 2-to-1 riprap, which way?
I think that just refers to for every 2 feet horizontal, it's a 1 foot vertical rise. For a 2-to-1 refers to a horizontal to vertical slope.
Okay.
Yeah.
So I don't know if this question's next one's for John maybe, but it says it appears from the floodplain graph that was provided that the heaviest floods will result in the water levels high enough to put water into the drainage basins. Is this true? Will this cause negative impacts?
I can try to answer that one. Jason might need to jump into, but yeah, I think that is correct. During high flows, something approaching the 1% event, which is, what people a lot of times call the 100-year event, there will be water going into the basins. Yeah, they're low enough that they're using them for compensating storage for floodwaters for the higher flooding events. That's why they were able to minimize their net fill. Was part of it, was these are going to flood during large flooding events. Yes. Negative effects, I mean, you would get some washout of some probably partially treated stormwater, but during those kind of events, that is typical. It is the norm for most commercial developments to retain stormwater on site to a certain point, and at some point that stormwater just flows off into wherever it goes, in this case in the floodplain. Jason, do you have anything to add to that?
I guess the only thing to add on to that is similar to what the pre-existing conditions out there. that floodplain elevation is into the existing parking lot some, and it essentially is going to act the same if it were to happen pre-existing, pre-development.
That's a good point.
Okay. Time for a few more questions here. Derek, you discussed the stormwater flow, but is not on the drawing. Can you show us on the drawing?
Is that something, Jason, or you can generally describe? I mean, I think the runoff is everything goes to the forebay, correct? At least hard pipe or grading.
Yeah, I can briefly walk through that.
Okay.
So, in looking at the building, kind of the front parking area between Michigan Ave and the building, there is a curb installed along the south end of the parking lot that will collect all the runoff from in front of the building down to the curb line. And not shown on this sheet is there is a stormwater inlet structure that will collect that water and pipe it towards the forebay. And then the east of the building, all of that runoff will be collected similarly in a curb line and into that same structure that is then piped into the forebay. And then, as previously discussed, the roof runoff will be collected in a header pipe and piped directly to that structure and into the forebay.
Okay. Are you concerned about the slope in high water events? I'm an adjacent property owner.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not sure. I'm not totally clear on exactly what Mr. Bostwick's asking about there. So I think it's related to the general concerns about flooding, about the impact on the wetlands, the impact on adjacent properties. I guess the slope, I would say, if it's referring to the 2-on-1 slope, the 2-on-1 slope is generally referred to as being fairly stable. And at least in the aquatic sense or from a shoreline erosion perspective, that's a slope that we look at as being fairly acceptable, accessible for wildlife, and not so steep that you have some of the adverse effects that come with vertical, vertical containment, whether it's shoreline erosion or retaining walls or whatever. So I don't have any major concerns with that 2-on-1 slope that I think is being referred to.
Where will the loading dock drain?
For my sake, this is Peter. There is not a loading dock. It's just an at-grade double door. So what you're seeing is all just a part of the parking lot, which will drain as Jason discussed.
Okay, thanks. What is the elevation of the detention basin as compared to the river? What is the elevation of the groundwater in relation to the detention basin?
I'm not sure.
Jason?
John, do you know what the river is right through there? Off of
The
floodplain
normal
mapping?
water elevation or the river floodplain?
Well,
It's on the drawing.
yeah, I'd have to see the
I
river.
don't remember what the top of the basin is. I just remember that it's going to flood during higher flows.
Yeah,
And I know the groundwater was like, you guys did some soil borings. I think it was like a couple feet below, 1 or 2 feet normal groundwater below the bottom of the detention basin.
yeah.
That sounds
Not that
right.
far below it, obviously.
Correct. But far
There'll
enough
be
where we
times
could
where
get some, yeah.
Go ahead, sorry.
No, I apologize, John. You're correct. We did have enough of that so that we could also get some, some kind of seepage into the ground at that point in time as well with the stormwater. So
Yeah, I mean, during the spring rains and snow melt, if we get that kind of event, there'll be, higher groundwater, and there's the potential that there'll be standing water in that detention basin for some amount of time until it infiltrates, just like any kind of low area, just like the floodplain all in this area. Obviously, there's standing water at certain times during the year. The rest of the time, normal groundwater should be below that detention basin. It should be dry-ish. I think that answers their question.
Yeah, I don't know if there's, I know just in the permit application in the cross sections, especially, I know it shows the bottom, the bottom of the basin elevation, the top of the basin elevation. Like John had referenced, we had some discussions or got some information from Jason on groundwater elevations in relation to the bottom of the detention basin. And so some of that information is in the file or available, but as far as the relation to the river level, I don't know that there's a set of plans that has a spot elevation for the Kalamazoo River. So.
Okay.
I believe the river is somewhere in the mid 780s, and the bottom of the storm basin is 787.5, and I believe the river is somewhere around 783. The top of the basin is 791, so it would hold back water up to 791.
Okay, we got to keep moving here. I want to cover a couple more questions before I move to the hearing part of it. In the recent past, there have been historical flooding in the area. It's a diagram with noted floodplain line and estimate. What assurances are there for no negative effects for environment, wellhead, washout of buildings or contents, etc.?
Yeah, so anytime you see a flood elevation on something, it is an estimate. We try to try to come to some kind of realization of what the flooding could get to during some kind of large event. In this case, we usually are regulating to the 1% chance event. So absolutely, it's an estimate. Anytime you see any kind of elevation given for a floodplain, it's an estimate. I'm not sure what he means about assurances for no negative impacts to wellhead, washout, buildings, and contents. I mean, the building here is going to be significantly above the floodplain. Michigan Building Code requires a minimum of 1 foot above. I think they're going a little more than that. So there should be no case where the building gets washed away or gets flooded. Not based on what we understand about the Kalamazoo River. Now, anything can happen. We regulate to the 1% chance event. There are events that obviously are worse than that. Going back to 2018, Niles, Michigan saw part of their flooding was actually believed to be worse than this, higher than the 1% chance event. That's very rare, obviously. Anything can happen, but the building should not be getting washed away or getting flooded, obviously. That's why they're building it higher. Not sure what he's talking about on wellhead and washout. I guess I'm not really sure what the wellhead references to. Maybe somebody else can help me with that. Is there a wellhead system in this area maybe that he's concerned about?
Yeah, I believe the village of Augusta participates in the Wellhead Protection Program. But there were some comments submitted for the public notice that had, and after the public notice, with concerns about effects on nearby drinking water wells. But I don't have any information that the project would have adverse effects on, any like wellheads.
Yeah, I mean, I don't see how that's possible. Any kind of drinking water well are going to be the aquifer they're drawing from it better be well separated from the Kalamazoo River, obviously.
Yeah.
It'll be deep, right? So this is not going to have any effect.
Okay, thanks, guys. I'm going to just one last question. It says, can you tell us how many people are on this meeting? How many citizens? And to answer your question, there's 14 people currently logged in on phone or computer to this meeting. It is 6:34 now, looks like, so we are going to have to move on. I'm going to put up Derek's email address and information a little bit later too, so feel free, right, Derek, to shoot you an email or give you a call if they have questions, huh?
Yeah, absolutely. Following the hearing, if there's anything we don't get through, any comments, questions, concerns, anything can be, just email is the best way. Yep. And my email is going to be shown and repeated throughout the presentation, I think. So.
Yes, right on. So we will make sure we show that for everybody that maybe has more questions that need to come in. All right, so thank you, Jason, Peter, Elise. Joel's going to mute your mics again now as we go into the next phase. And what I'm going to do is bring my other screen back up here. So bear with me a minute. Let's see here. All right. Okay, so now we're going to move into the actual official public hearing, and this is where it's a little more formal. So we're going to be doing some official statements here in just a minute. Before I have Derek read off our official hearing statement, I'm going to just remind everybody that there's more than to make a comment. You can do it. You don't have to do it tonight at this meeting. You can submit your comment by mail to the EGLE Water Resources Division, Kalamazoo District Office, 7953 Adobe Road, Kalamazoo, Michigan, 49003. And I'm reading these off because I do note we've got a couple people joining us by phone that have just recently come on. People can also comment via MyWaters. And you can see the email address there, or the instructions there. For those people on the phone, this is probably easiest to explain to you, and that's if you want to make a comment, you can send it by email. And email, you can send it to Derek's email address, which is haraldsond@michigan.gov. So it's HAROLDS as in Sam, OND as in Delta @mi.gov. So that's how you send it by mail. Okay, so Derek, do you want to read off the hearing statement now?
Sure.
All right, go ahead.
I'll do that. Okay. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Derek Haraldson, and I am the district representative in the Water Resources Division of the Michigan Department of Environment, Great Lakes, and Energy, or EGLE. I will be serving as the hearing officer for this public hearing on EGLE submission number HNY-TBHE-B3X0P. With me tonight, as you have heard already, Kyle Alexander, Kalamazoo District Supervisor, and John Byha, Kalamazoo District Floodplain Engineer. So to describe how this is going to work, I'm going to begin with some background information about why we are here tonight. I will then describe the purpose of the hearing and how your comments will be used. Following that, I will outline the procedures under which we will take your comments, and then describe what will happen after tonight's hearing. It will be then time for you to provide comments, and we will spend the majority of the time tonight listening to those comments. At the end of the hearing, I will provide a short summary in closing. So by way of background information, the Water Resources Division is responsible for administering a variety of programs that help protect inland lakes and streams, wetlands, floodplains, sand dunes, and the Great Lakes. These programs regulate certain activities such as dredging or filling in a lake, stream, or wetland, constructing a dam, constructing a marina, placing shore protection or constructing docks, and building in a designated critical sand dune area, wetland or floodplain. The law governing those responsibilities is the Natural Resources and Environmental Protection Act, 1994, Public Act 451 as amended, otherwise known as and referred to in the rest of the script as Act 451. So we are here tonight because Midwest 5 LLC has proposed the following: to place fill in wetlands and the 100-year floodplain of the Kalamazoo River in order to construct a Dollar General store. Approximately 385 cubic yards of sand fill and 104 cubic yards of 4-inch to 8-inch rock will be placed on a 1-on-2 slope within 0.085 acres of wetland, or 3,714 square feet, which is located within the 100-year floodplain of the Kalamazoo River. And the project will result in a net fill of 129 cubic yards. The purpose of the hearing tonight, in order for a permit to be granted, EGLE must find that the proposed activities described in the public notice meet certain criteria set by Part 303 and Part 301 of Act 451. Excuse me, Part 31 of Act 451. In general, we must consider the effect of the project on wetlands and the 100-year floodplain of the Kalamazoo River. When reviewing an application for permit under the provisions of Part 303, Wetlands Protection of Act 451, EGLE is charged to make the following indications as required by Section 303.11 of Part 303. A permit for an activity listed in section 30304 shall not be approved unless the department determines that the issuance of a permit is in the public interest, that the permit is necessary to realize the benefits derived from the activity, and that the activity is otherwise lawful. Also requires that a permit shall not be issued unless it is shown that an unacceptable disruption will not result to the aquatic resources. And secondly, that a permit shall not be issued unless the applicant also shows either of the following. Either A, that the proposed activity is primarily dependent upon being located in the wetland, or B, that a feasible and prudent alternative does not exist. When reviewing an application for a permit under the provisions of the state's floodplain regulatory authority found in Part 31 of Act 451, EGLE is charged to make the following considerations. Criteria for determining permissibility of encroachment. So this is under Rule 323.1315. Part 1 is that an encroachment in the floodway which, acting alone or in combination with existing or future similar works, may cause harmful interference, shall not be approved. In making this determination, an analysis shall be made for a range of discharges up to and including the 100-year flood discharge, modified to reflect changes in land use and development reasonably anticipated to occur within the watershed up to 20 years from the date of application. And secondly, an encroachment in the floodplain landward of the floodway limits, which, acting alone or in combination with existing or future works, does not cause harmful interference, may be permitted. So the purpose of tonight's hearing is to give anyone interested in the project an opportunity to provide information that EGLE can use in making the decision whether or not to issue a permit. Please recognize that EGLE can only use the information you provide if it relates to the criteria that we must use in making a decision. Some of you may simply want to express your support or opposition to the project. We will be happy to make note of your position, but please understand that EGLE is, by law, not allowed to base our decision on whether or not there is widespread public support or opposition. So in just a moment, I will outline the procedures we will use for taking your comments, or really Jim may outline those again. But before I do so, I need to mention that the notice of this public hearing was published in the Tuesday, August 18th edition of the Kalamazoo Gazette. So during the comments, I would just ask that we are, everybody is courteous, respectful to one another, and to EGLE staff and to the applicant staff. Recognize that we are here to provide a fair opportunity for you to express your comments on the project and listen to those comments. So this online hearing is being recorded. Your comments are going to be part of the information that we will use in making its decision and making our decision and whether or not to issue a permit on the proposed project. The public comment period for this public hearing will be open for 10 days, starting today and ending on September 9th. Additional information and comments submitted in writing during the 10-day period will also be considered in our decision. So I think you're going to see slides later that I think have a date of September 10th, but I'm pretty sure that 10 days is going to, if it's starting today, it's going to be ending on September 9th. So you can email or send me additional comments up to that time, either in my waters by using the link that's in the presentation, or you can also email them to me. And then following the close of the public comment period, we will make a decision to either issue a permit for the project as proposed or with modifications, or to send a letter of denial. And then you can follow the status of the application and our decision on the MyWaters website. Thank you for your attention. Bearing with me as I go through that long script. We will now begin going through the names of hearing attendees that have indicated that they would like to make a statement.
All right, thanks, Derek. And just want to let everybody know for your statements, you have about 5 minutes. So we'll give you 5 minutes to make your statement. And Derek's going to help keep track of time. And when you got 1 minute left, he'll let you know. When your time's up, I'll let you know. If we have time afterwards, we might go back and call on you again if you need more time. Just a couple reminders about how to make a comment. If you'd like to make an official comment, I know a couple of you said when you registered you want to, so we'll be calling you up here in a minute. After we're done with that, if you want to make an official comment, you can just click the raise hand icon and we will unmute your mic and call on you. If you don't want to talk, then you can just go to the question box, write the word comment, and then type in your question or your comment, sorry. So go to the question box, write the word comment, and then type in your comment, and that'll be part of the official record as well. If you're on the phone, I know a couple people joined us by phone. If you want to make a comment, hit *9. Again, it's *9, and that allows you to raise your hand, and we will call on you using your last couple digits of your phone number. Okay, so Derek, do you want to read off the first name? Oh, before you do that, one more reminder, when you are called, if you would please restate your name and any organization that you might be representing. So Derek, you want to read off those first couple names, the first one?
Yep, absolutely. So the first one would be Kenneth Kornheiser.
Okay, Kenneth, looks like you're unmuted, so you can unmute yourself by clicking the microphone icon and go ahead and make your statement.
At this point in time, I actually do not have an additional comment except the one I submitted already online. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Derek, what's the next one?
The next one would be Douglas Bostwick.
Okay, Mr. Bostwick, looks like your line is unmuted, so go ahead and repeat your name, organization, and make your comment.
Okay, Douglas Bostwick. I am the adjacent property owner, owning the bike shop property next to the property you're working to fill there on the west side. My concern obviously is a financial one as well as anything else, but this is not to do with that. I know this is a hearing on just the fill. A couple of my questions, they're going to be filling the area underneath where this building is going to go. They're obviously not concerned about the building holding up. They're going to be putting, looks like approximately 8 feet of fill underneath this building. I assume will be packed down tight to where this building is not going to go anyplace. By moving this fill out roughly 16 feet, it would appear to be the total fill. Some of it is going to be wetlands fill. Some of it is just going to be fill of an area which is not in the wetlands. It's going to leave a little inlet of water coming into my property on the west side of where this building will be. I'm hoping it's not going to be much, and obviously these high water times are not often. As you mentioned, the flood of 2018, that water was up within a foot to a foot and a half of where this building is going to go. So there has been some high water events, which I have a small concern about. I know the minimal impact of the fill, I'm not super concerned. It's just a matter of you start letting one guy fill, the next guy fill, the next guy fill, where does it stop? But I'm not against filling and transparency. We use a fill procedure. Myself and my family has owned that property for 45 years. We are aware we did use the fill process after the tornado of 1978 or 77 rather. We got the permit to do some filling, but it was only a 3 to 4 foot depth, not a 7 or 8 foot depth is what we're looking at here. Just a little concerned about the amount, the depth of the fill that's going to go in, and that part of it. I assume you're also going to be putting silt fence on the west side of the property where you're going to be filling it. I see you've got it noted to be on the north side and also on the east side, so I would assume that. Also, if I didn't mention it, I'm not used to these meetings, but are you going to fill, I guess this is more of a question, are you going to fill the area in, then go back and dig back up the fill to put footings in. I guess it's just a couple of questions as far as what's going to happen. And I assume then by your fill area, the bottom of the area going to a 2-to-1 slope, that's that question. If you're going to fill in that depth, then you're going to have to go out a little further on the bottom part of it. So not having much more to say, just, you know, a few more questions, as probably the property is going to be most affected by this development. Guess that's really all I had to say. Just wanted, you know, a couple things, a couple questions.
Okay, thank you, sir. Thank you for your comment. And just to want to remind people that during the official comment period, we don't really answer questions. So we're just taking your comment in. Again, I will put up Derek's email address after we're done, so you can email him directly if you have some specific questions you'd like to have addressed. Derek, do we have another person that's said they want to make comment ahead of time?
I think really besides the applicant, I don't. So I don't have any more on this pre-registration list.
Okay, thank you. So now we're going to go to the rest of our attendees here tonight. If you want to make a comment, feel free to raise your hand. Again, and I see one is raised on the phone. If you're on the phone, you can hit *9 and that raises your hand and we'll call on you. If not, you just click the raise hand icon. You can also type your comment into the question box in your Zoom toolbar and write the word comment on it, and we'll accept that as well as a comment. So I'm looking at my attendee list here, and looks like we have one of our telephone people who has a comment. A telephone number ending in 126. We will unmute your line and you can make your comment. So remember to please state your name and any organization you're with. So you are unmuted. Telephone number ending in 126.
Hello.
Hello.
My name is Samuel Harper. I own the property directly north of the site that you're planning to build the thing. I've had plenty of conversations with Derek expressing my concerns on the water table, and I just want to make a real short comment. One is we started off this meeting and you said, hey, you had a letter of approval. First of all, I've spoken to every one of my neighbors throughout this whole thing. We were never given a chance to approve this. So if that makes any difference whatsoever, I wish you would go back and check the people that gave you the letter of approval and see whether they actually had the right or should have given you the letter of approval. That's being said. You're also talking about the water table, and I can only tell you that this past year has been a very, very dry year, as most of you know, and I've had water standing where I mow my lawn 3/4 of this year, and that in the past has never happened. And now I've had water within a foot of my back door every time we have a heavy rain, and you cannot tell me that this is not going to affect me. Now, every comment that you've made so far is you don't think it's going to affect anyone. I would like to know or voice my concern on what do I do when it does affect me, and that's all I have to say. Thank you very much. I appreciate your time, and I appreciate you listening to me. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, sir. Okay, we'll put you back on mute. Thank you, sir. Now I will see if anybody else would like to make a comment. Remember, you just have to raise your hand or type it in. I'm not seeing anybody yet, but I'm going to give it a few seconds here. It's a little awkward silence, but there is some delay sometimes with these, so I want to make sure people have a chance if they want to. So just going to go silent here for a minute. Okay, looks like we do have another hand up. Douglas Bostwick, we are unmuting your mic. You can go ahead and again restate your name, organization, and then make your comment, please.
Douglas Bostwick, adjacent property owner. A lot of my questions are probably going to be directed toward the local municipality, which in your application is listed as Ross Township. I don't know why Ross Township is listed as the local unit of government, not the village of Augusta. But in talking to Ross Township today, they were not aware of everything. I assume because they are the tax base, the tax roll enforcer, the whatever you want to call them. All permits should still be going through the village of Augusta, not through Ross Township. And I guess I was another question, which maybe I would have for Derek or for somebody else in the group, is why Ross Township is listed. But these are all questions that maybe I can answer or go through Derek and get some answers on these. Maybe you can answer that one for me at least. So I know what's what. Just that final comment, I guess. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, sir. And yeah, like I said, after the hearing, you can email Derek with any questions you have. Okay, it looks like we have another phone attendee who would like to make a comment. So person with the phone number ending in 830, where you are unmuted. So go ahead and state your name and go ahead.
Yeah, my name is Terry Burdoff, and I'm a resident of Village of Augusta. And my concern is I have property that is in the flood stage, and I live across the street from Mr. Harper, and I'm still concerned about the water that we do have on those really days that we have a lot of snow that melts or the storms that come in, because I've had to move a couple of my buildings that was out of the flood stage because it ruined the floor on it. And I just want to know what is going to be the assurance that this thing don't go above than what you guys are predicting it to do. Because I feel that you're filling in part of the flood stage where it should probably be either dredged out or something done to make more room for water to collect instead of being in my property and Mr. Harper's property and his neighbor. And that's all I have to say.
Okay, thank you, sir, for your comment. Okay, is there anyone else who would like to make an official comment? I'm looking at my question box. Looks like we have no one that's typed anything in either. So, okay. Well, then at this time, what I'm going to do is have Derek go ahead and read off the, oops, let me get to my one slide I got here. Oops, there we go. So Derek, I'm going to have you read off the closing statement and we'll start to wrap this up then. So go ahead, Derek.
Okay, let me make sure I'm not muted here. Thanks, Jim.
You're good.
Pull that up 1 second. Okay, well, thanks everybody for your time and comments and cooperation. We appreciate your interest in the proposed project and that you took the time to be here tonight. As indicated at the beginning of the hearing, you may submit additional written comments until September 9th. And again, I've got down the 10th, but it's going to be September 9th. It's 10 days from today, including today. So following the close of the public comment period, we will consider all comments received and make a decision on the project. So that'll be sometime after September 9th. The hearing is now closed. Thank you again for taking the time to participate.
Okay, thanks, Derek. I'm going to just bring up your slide there with your contact information for people that might have any questions, afterwards. I know some people had some additional questions. Again, for those people on the phone, I'm going to read off Derek's phone number and email. So, Derek, your phone number is 269-569-3609. And Derek's email address is haraldsond@michigan.gov. So it's HAROLD SOND as in Delta at mi.gov. So that's how you get a hold of Derek for further questions. Derek or any other panelists, John or Kyle, do you guys have any last minute comments you'd like to make?
I wouldn't mind, I guess, anyone that was concerned about the flooding issue or flooding issues that go on in the area currently. Obviously, we've had very high groundwater for a number of years in Michigan. But besides this year, we've had very wet years. So I know the one gentleman, I can't remember his name, was talking about how his yard floods on a regular basis because of high groundwater. You know, if he wants to circle back with me or Derek, we can certainly talk about those concerns some more. I would just like to point out that during a flooding event, the amount of water going through this area of the river is substantial, I'll say. The amount of fill that they're putting in is not even 1% of the volume of water passing through every minute under that bridge. So it's not going to make any difference. We could certainly, you know, look at that mathematically. If someone wants to talk about that, we can certainly talk about it. We don't just guess. I think that was kind of someone's assertion that we think it's not going to be a problem. We know it's not going to be an issue. We can talk more about that if they want to reach out to us. I'm happy to do that. But it won't be a problem. This area does flood. It's in a floodplain. This is just project is not going to make it worse. I think that's all I pretty much had right now. Thanks.
All right, thanks, John. Derek, Kyle, do you guys have any parting comments?
No, just thanks everybody for participating, and thanks Derek for taking the questions.
Yeah, no, I'll just echo that. I appreciate people taking time out of their evening to join. So thank you.
All right, great. Well, thanks everyone for joining us tonight and for participating. Have a great evening. We're going to end it right now. So thank you.
Thanks, Jim.